story of me being here, and it's kind of awesome. And I was a little nervous, but then I realized that highly likely I'm going to know and love everybody in the room, and I was right. So I'm going to read a little bit, and I've had a hard time knowing that we're going to have some kids here going through the different chapters. You forget how much you add in. So I think it's the safest bet is to read the first chapter, and that'll be the best one. So I'm just going to give, first of all, my phone to Steve, because he's going to be technically awesome and live. Okay?
I'm trying to get my phone to come out. Yep.
Okay, so this is from Elemental Awakening, which I think most of you guys have read or get close to read. And all right, so I'm going to start with chapter 1 just because that's the least likely to offend little people. Okay. The first time she saw him, Helen Browning was 12 years old. Waiting while her mother rifled through the shelves at a local bookstore, she wandered into the section that housed the coffee table books her father called a waste of space. She pushed aside a particularly heavy tome of Parisian photography and stared straight into his paint eyes. You do? Thank you. For a half hour, she looked through the book, tears dripping onto its glossy pages. When her mother found her, crying in the corner and clutching a volume of ancient art, she sighed and offered a tissue. A born romantic, she patted Helen's shoulder and told her, of course it was a beautiful book, and of course they'd buy it. She never blinked at the price. 18 years later, Helen lay in a strange bed as the rising sun pierced the space between sea-green shutters, gradually illuminating the room. She rolled to her side in the empty bed and picked up her phone to check the time. She dropped it back on the nightstand. 3 more hours, and she finally get to see him in person. She'd waited years, and now he was here, close enough to touch. Realizing sleep would continue to elude her, she sat up in bed and selected a book from the pile on the faded blue table that served as a nightstand. What the room lacked in luxury, it made up in homey charm. From the hardwood floors that had been scrubbed to a dull sheen and covered with a colorful rug, to the iron bed and framed department store prints on the wall, it was exactly as it seemed, an extra bedroom in the family home of an empty nesters cashing in on the popularity of online vacation rentals, its listing promising homemade muffins for breakfast and proximity to him. Helen turned on the low table lamp and opened the book in her hands. It was a historical account of the statue known as Sarlik, named by the late 20th century English explorer Robert Waterwood, who had found him while mapping caves in Malta. Sarlik, she whispered into the hush of the dawn. His name was translated as pain, and it was obvious why. At well over 6 feet tall, his face was classically handsome with a long straight nose, high cheekbones, and a firm chin. His body was of such perfection it had been said by more than one art expert he outshone the David. His pose was steeped in mystery. Instead of a pensive or victorious pose, his arms were stretched from his sides, every muscle strained forward. Even his fingers were reaching for something only the artist could see. She ran her fingertips over the close-up photograph of his face. There was something in his eyes that called to her. They were sad, resigned to his fate, but somehow hopeful. They leapt off the page as if she, and only she, could save him. She knew it was impossible, irrational even, a testament of the artist's skill, but still she found herself returning to his photos again and again. His eyes were focused on a point in front of him. His mouth was twisted into an expression of agony. She never understood why a sculptor would have created a man frozen in so much pain. She set the book down and picked up another, its cover faded and its pages limp from years of turning. It was the book her mother had bought her, and the only piece of her childhood left after a faulty wire had ignited the insulation between the walls of her family's home. Carefully setting the book on the bed next to her, she switched off the lamp and walked across the cool wood floors to the window. She flicked the shutters, revealing palm trees and an amber sky. The sun fell onto her face and melted the lingering sadness that occurred every time she thought of that night. It didn't take therapy to understand why she was so drawn to Sarah. In his face, she found the pain still residing in her heart. Helen climbed out, and there's a little page break. Helen climbed out of her car, a paper cup of Kathy Brown's rich coffee, sweetened with a drizzle of caramel and a liberal splash of heavy cream in her hand. She washed down the last bite of the homemade brioche that was a far step above her hostess's promised muffins, and closed the car door. She brushed an errant crumb from the soft cotton of her sea blue t-shirt and adjusted the colorful scarf draped around her neck. She considered the signs littering the parking garage for a moment before turning away from the pictures of a stick figure boarding a tram and walked toward the exit and the pathway that snaked its way up the hillside. It was, she decided, the perfect day for a walk. Her step was light, her leather ballet flat slapping the cement in time to the excited beat of her heart. Her phone was nestled in the bottom of the purse slung over her shoulder, the ringer set to emergency. Her mind was clear, knowing her patients and their precious babies were in needless capable hands. She had 2 glorious days free of responsibility and late-night phone calls from expectant mothers. She raised her face to the sun and let soak into her skin. She slowed as she caught her first glimpse of the museum. Situated far above the city, the white stone and glass buildings sparkled in the sun. Banners painted with the image of Starligh's face snapped in the wind that sent her navy linen skirt dancing around her thighs and teased strands from her braided hair. Every curve of the sidewalk exposed the teasing lips of her destination. Wild sage scented the air until it felt almost holy. The path widened, finally opening to a panoramic view of the mountains to the east and the Pacific to the west. Homes hugged cliffs that fell into the white water of crashing waves to the south, while in the distance, streams of cars carried their occupants through life. She had to give the designers and architects credit. They created a building where a person could transcend the mundane and leave reality behind. Taking a deep breath, she looked at the billboard-sized banner hanging off the front of the museum. When Robert Waterwood had emerged from deep within the cave, he told everyone of the massive statue trapped behind a partially collapsed entrance. Immediately, the wealthy Velo family had decided to back his expedition in return for rights to whatever he found. At the time, the newspapers had been filled with speculation of hidden treasure. Waterwood, and presumably the family, had been disappointed the expedition had wielded nothing but the single statue. Why it was buried, why it was the only item in the cave, and why no one had ever heard of it were all questions that had never been answered. She made her way past a small fountain featuring a nude boy holding a frog and stood in line with elementary students and a group of tourists. An older woman with curly silver hair caught her eye. "Are you here to see him?" she asked in a conspiratorial whisper. Helen smiled, taking in her sparkling eyes and friendly face. "I am. I take it you are too?" She gestured toward the woman's lime green t-shirt with its white outline of Starlight's face. The woman nodded. "Yes, it's so exciting, isn't it, to see him in person? My husband," she waved her hand toward the marble benches lining the entrance, "that's him over there. He doesn't understand." She waved brightly to the man in a polo shirt and neatly pressed shorts with razor-sharp creases, his white legs blinding in the morning sun. His nose was buried in a book. He glanced up as if she called out to him and gave a quick grin before returning to his novel. "He's not even going in. Said he didn't want to stand in line to see some old statue and rather sit out here and read." She shook her head, the heathen, and she said with a smile, "I'm Debbie Roberts." Helen laughed. "Helen Browning, I know what you mean. My friends think I'm crazy." "Yes," she barely paused for breath. "We're staying not too far from here, at the Rose Inn in Sherman Oaks." Debbie's eyebrows raised in expectation. "I live here in California, but further north." Oh, disappointment floated across her face like a small cloud in a swift breeze. "Well," she continued, "the next time you're here, you really need to visit. It's a lovely place surrounded by roses." She sighed happily, "Even more than the first time we stayed there." "I stayed by the beach. I wanted to be close enough to be here for the opening." "Well, you had to be here first thing," the woman said in agreement. "Thank God Frank hasn't adjusted to civilian hours. If it had been up to me, I might have overslept." Her face reflected proper horror. "After all, Starlight hasn't been exhibited since 1982. Restoration, I hear. I wanted to see him when we were stationed in Germany. He was in Italy in '79, but the museum sold out." Helen clucked in sympathy. "Frank thought I was a goose for crying as we left. He has no idea how amazing Starlight is." She looked around the crowd and leaned closer. "He calls him garlic," she confessed in a low whisper. Helen laughed in spite of herself. "That's awful." "It is. I told you he was a heathen," she said with affection. The line inched forward. "Have you read In Pain and Glory?" Debbie's eyes lit up. "Have I? I own it in both audio and hardback. It's marvelous." "Do you remember the bit that said the Velo Family Trust had a clause that required each museum to only show him behind glass?" I do. I can't believe he's going to be in the garden. Helen nodded eagerly. It'll be the first time he's been outside in the sunlight without glass since they brought him out of the cave. A wave of excitement passed over the crowd. Standing on her tiptoes, Helen arched her neck to see above the people milling around the entrance. I think they're letting people in. The butterflies fluttered in her stomach at a frantic rate. She pressed her hands together. If I start screaming like a teenage girl at a pop concert, do you think anyone will notice? Debbie reached over and squeezed Helen's hands. Now with me screaming right with you. Just promise not to faint. I'm a good person, but I don't think I have the self-control to stay with you. I'm likely to step over your body and run. Helen laughed. Fair warning. The crowd shuffled and turned as they began to file to the doors. Helen lost sight of Debbie in the chaos as she funneled into the main door. Once in the great hall, the crowd began to thin while those who could walk faster outpaced those who strolled. Ignoring the priceless works of art dominating the walls, Helen turned unerringly to the door that opened into the garden. She'd studied the map in the museum until she'd memorized every twist and turn of the cavernous space. Another crowd waited next to the cheery young docent wearing a plaid button-up shirt and polka dot bow tie, a combination he pulled off with ease. Eyes twinkling, he waved his arms. Calm down, you'll get to see him soon. He chuckled and wiggled his thick brows. What is it about this guy and the ladies? It's his body, a young woman in a college tank top shouted. The other women in the group giggled. The man shook his head. And I thought you were here for me. He put his hand to his chest in mock dismay. I'm heartbroken. Do we have enough to get started? He used his finger to count heads. All right then, you're about to see a sight that has intrigued millions for decades. Sarlik, a statue by an unknown artist, has drawn crowds since his first exhibit. If you ask me, he lowered his voice conspiratorially, I think there's some sort of magic involved. Why else would so many have this sort of reaction? He winked at the college girl, unless it really is his body. Helen smiled in amusement when the girl blew the docent a kiss. The young man's eyes sharpened while the crowd laughed. She wondered absently if he'd get her number. She glanced idly at the people waiting with her, looking for a lime green shirt. A man near the front caught her eye. Tall with dark red hair, his gaze seared her. She smiled politely and continued her perusal of the crowd while the guide outlined the history of Sarlik. There you are. Helen turned as Debbie slid next to her. The older woman was out of breath. I got caught behind a group of first graders and realized it's not the done thing to run the little deers over. She shifted the bag on her shoulder. Don't look now, but you have an admirer. I'm pretty sure he's not looking at me, Helen said with a laugh, nodding toward the large group of Greek-lettered tanks. No, Debbie looked again. I know when a man's interested. I may be old, but I'm not blind. Helen started to turn. You're not old, she said automatically, accustomed to Eve's soft-voiced complaint. I said not to look, Debbie hissed, grabbing her arm. Why not, Helen said in amusement. If he wants to get my attention, then he wants me to look. She glanced over her shoulder and met the light brown eyes of the man she'd seen earlier. She gave him a more thorough perusal. He was handsome in a scholarly sort of way with his dark red hair spiked around his head. He wore his faded jeans and crumpled plaid shirt well, the soft fabric molding a body that looked as if it spent a fair amount of time in the gym. Helen wasn't a gym rat herself, preferring to do her morning yoga in the sunlit garden, but she appreciated the result of this man's work. He was actually, she realized, exactly the type of man she preferred to date. She stared for a few seconds longer, warming the smile on her lips an invitation. She waited, expecting an answering smile or for him to perhaps move closer. He stood motionless, watching her. And now let's be on our way, the guide's voice forced her eyes forward. Helen put her hand to her stomach to calm her nerves. Remember, no fainting, Debbie said with a laugh. Helen smiled and made a mental note to get the other woman's contact information so they could keep in touch. This was a woman after her own heart. She moved forward with the crowd and took a deep breath. She felt as though she'd waited her whole life for this moment and couldn't shake the sensation she stood on the edge of a cliff and was waiting to fly. And if you haven't read it yet, I hope you do now.